Good morning, everyone. It's April 30th, and we're starting our planning board meeting. The first item this morning is a corrected resolution of Waters Village Site Plan Amendment, where staff is recommending approval. Commissioner Bartley can't vote on this one, but all the other commissioners can. So do I have a motion to approve the corrected resolution for Waters Village Site Plan Amendment?
I move to approve the corrected resolution for Waters Village.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 301. And the next, we have two record plats this morning. The first is subdivision plat number 222-0210140 Locust Level, and the second one is subdivision plat 2026-0650, 2026-0650 Cabin Branch, where staff is recommending approval of these two record plats. Do I have a motion to approve the record plats?
I move to approve the record plots.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-0. The next is, this morning we have three regulatory extension requests. The first is Primrose. Four regulatory extension requests. The first is Primrose at 16550 Georgia Avenue, preliminary plan extension request number 2. The second is Burdette Property, preliminary plan, site plan, and forest conservation plan, request number 1. The third is Emery Grove Village, preliminary plan, site plan, and forest conservation plan extension request number 2. And the last is Maisel Property Administrative Subdivision Plan extension request number 1. Do I have a motion to approve these 4 regulatory extension requests where staff is recommending approval?
I move to approve the 4 regulatory extension requests.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. We're going to take a 1-minute break and switch over to our next item, item number 8, briefing on the demographic characteristics of children in Montgomery County. Thank you. Good morning. We're on item number 8, the briefing on the demographic characteristics of children in Montgomery County. And this morning we have James Lee leading this presentation. Welcome, Mr. Lee.
Hi, for the record, James Lee, Forecaster and Demographic Research Specialist with the Research and Strategic Projects Division. Again, good morning, members of the Planning Board. First, I would like to introduce Alana Anderson, the Research Division's graduate assistant from the University of Maryland, and she has been with us with the Planning Department this past academic year, and we'll be here until May. And she actually will be presenting the bulk of the presentation in front of the planning board. And she is actually coming to the planning board for the first time today. So a little bit of background about the children in Montgomery County demographic profile. First, we are very delighted to provide this informational briefing to you all on the Research Division's newest publication on the child population of Montgomery County. This is the 7th demographic profile published by the Research Division and follows past profiles on specific racial and ethnic groups, which include older adults, the Black population, women, and people with disabilities in Montgomery County and other groups as well. So now I will go ahead and hand the presentation to Alana. Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Alana Anderson, Graduate Assistant with the Research and Strategic Projects Division. This report is a continuation of the Research Division's population series and is focused on the child population of Montgomery County. Children and the households in which they live have unique needs such as schools and childcare facilities that require an understanding of their characteristics by planners and decision makers. In this profile, children are defined as people under 18 years old unless otherwise noted. The data analysis focused on the county-wide child population and households with children. Like the other demographic profiles we've published, we analyzed the characteristics of the population of interest and compared them with the total population of all ages. For topics that have data reported at the household level, like housing tenure and household income, the information will refer to households with children rather than the children themselves. As part of the analysis, we also compared the characteristics of households with children with those of all households, regardless of household type. The profile mostly uses demographic, housing, and economic data from the U.S. Census Bureau's 2024 American Community Survey one-year estimates, as well as data from Montgomery County Public Schools and the Maryland Department of Planning for a couple of topics. Of the findings from our analysis, here are the following key takeaways. In 2024, there were 243,480 children in Montgomery County, representing 22% of its total population. The county's child population has been growing more slowly than the county's overall population in recent decades. The child population in Montgomery County is very racially diverse, with no single racial group comprising the majority. Households with children as a group were more likely to be homeowners, live in single-family homes, and earn higher incomes. But the analysis also found greater economic disadvantages among households with children headed solely by a female when looking at income, poverty, and public assistance indicators. In 2024, there were 243,480 children in Montgomery County, a 29% increase from 1970, when the child population was nearly 189,000. However, children represent just 22% of the total county population, down significantly from 36% in 1970, as their growth rate has been slower than the total population for much of this time period. Much of this shift occurred during the 1970s, when fertility rates declined and the large baby boom generation aged out of childhood. A secondary bump in child population occurred as millennials were born in the 1980s and the 90s, as many millennials are the children of baby boomers. However, growth in the child population has continued to slow down in recent years. But it is also important to note that the child population's decline and the percentage share of the population is on par with the state as well as the country.
Can I ask one quick question on this? And you
Yes.
answered, I think, part of it, or maybe this accounts for most of it, but in the 70s, which is the only sort of decade where we saw a real decline, not just a relative decline in the share, the baby boomers aging out, was that the largest factor at play for kind of the overall decrease in kids in the county, or were there other issues that we saw through the research? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. If you extend the graph further back in time, that 36% bump is actually a little bit higher. So it is really the baby boomers. So if you extend it back to the 40s, the 30s, the 30s was really a low point nationally and for the county as well in terms of, it was really low in terms of births and
Yeah.
number of children.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Changes in the size of generational cohorts have impacted the age distribution of the child population over time. Here we focus on baby boomers and millennials because they have been historically larger generational cohorts and have had more noticeable impacts on a population's age structure. The 1970s saw the youngest baby boomers entering their teenage years. Thus, from 1970 to 1980, the ages 15 to 17 group had grown more in absolute numbers and as a share of the child population relative to the other age groups. From 1980 to 1990, the number of children increased as older millennials were born. The underage population jumped 71%, while the population ages 5 to 9 grew by 32%. This growth also increased the share of younger children under age 10 from 1980 to 1990. Towards 2000 and 2010, growth shifted to older age groups, with children ages 10 to 17 forming a larger share of the child population. As the growth of the child population overall continued to slow after 2010, the age structure has changed slowly. Notably, in 2024, the total number of children under age 5 was 5% lower than in 2010, while the ages 5 to 9 population in 2024 was 1% lower than in 2010. The child population is a racially diverse group. Since 2010, no single racial group has represented a majority of the county's child population. In addition, the child population was more racially diverse than the county's overall population, and the child population diversified at a faster pace than the overall population. From 2010 to 2024, children identifying as white decreased from 51% to 32% of the child population. The share of white residents in the county overall decreased from 57% to 40%. Children identifying as 2 or more races grew from 7% to 19%, and Hispanic children of any race grew from 21% to 29%. In comparison, from 2010 to 2024, multiracial residents grew from 4% to 12%, and the Hispanic population grew from 17% to 22%. The vast majority of children are native U.S. born. 90% of children were native born in comparison to 66% of the county overall. Only 10% of children were foreign born. Of these foreign born children, 20% were naturalized citizens, or 2% of the total child population. Among children, English and Spanish were the most commonly spoken languages at home. About 61% of children spoke only English at home, compared with 57% countywide. Spanish was spoken at home by 21% of children, a somewhat higher share than the 18% observed for the county overall, making it the most common non-English language among households of children. 18% of children spoke a language other than English or Spanish at home. The majority of the county students were enrolled in public school. 180,599 students in the county were enrolled in elementary, middle, or high school. 86% of these students were enrolled in public schools, and 14% were enrolled in private schools. The distribution of students by education level was similar for both public and private schools, but public school enrollment had a slightly larger share of elementary school students. 43% of public school students were enrolled in elementary schools versus 41% of private school students. 32% of households in the county had children under age 18. That's about 124,000 households. The pie graph shows the distribution of the children population by household type to look at who children live with. Of the county's 243,000 children, nearly 75% lived in households with a married couple. The next most prevalent group were the 14% of children living with a female householder with no spouse or partner present. Another way of looking at who children live with is by their relationship with the head of household. 91% of children lived with a head of household who is the child's biological or adopted parent or step-parent. Another 6% lived with a grandparent, 3% with another relative, and 1% with an unrelated adult, such as a foster parent. Here, we will begin looking at several types of characteristics at the household level. The data will refer to the characteristics of households with children rather than only for the child population. Households with children were more likely to have access to a vehicle at home. 98% of households with children had access to a vehicle at home, while 91% of households countywide did so. In addition, households with children were also more likely to have access to 2 or more vehicles. 73% of households with children had at least 2 vehicles versus only 55% of all households. Households with children were more likely to be homeowners. Households with children had a home ownership rate of 68%, which is higher than the county's overall rate of 65%. And nearly 1/3 of households with children were renters. Households with children were more likely to live in single-family units. 78% of households with children lived in single-family units, with the majority of this household type in single-family detached homes. In comparison, less than half of all households in the county overall lived in single-family detached units, and only 18% in single-family attached units. Only 5% of households with children lived in large multifamily units, compared with 17% of all households in the county. Renters and owners with children differed in terms of how burdened they were by housing costs. For the homeowner statistics here, we are specifically referring to only households that have a mortgage. Among renter households with children, 52% were cost burdened, which is higher than the 47% for all renters. In contrast, 18% of homeowner households with children were cost burdened, lower than the 25% for all homeowner households. In addition, the median monthly housing costs for households with children, regardless of housing tenure status, were higher than for all households. For households with children, the median cost was $3,420, nearly $500 higher than the countywide median for all homeowner households. For renters with children, the median cost was $2,288, nearly $200 higher than the countywide median for all renter households. Households with children generally earned higher incomes. Among households with children, 46% earned $200,000 or more per year, compared with 33% for all households countywide. While this indicates the households with children as a group are likely doing better economically, we dive into other economic indicators a bit more in the next several slides. Reflecting the contrasting annual income distributions, the median annual income for households with children was $183,143, well above the countywide median of $140,837 for all households. However, substantial disparities in income by household type exist. Households with children headed by a female with no spouse present had a median income of just $56,475. Only 26% of the 218,338 median for married couple households with children. Poverty rates for households with children and the county-wide population were similar, at 7% and 8% respectively. Reflective of the disparities in median income, households with children headed by a female with no spouse present had a much higher poverty rate of 25%. Married couple households with children had the lowest poverty rate of 3%. Poverty rates are often related to participation rates in public assistance programs. Here, we look at one form of public assistance for low-income households, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, also known as food stamps. Among households with children, 9% received SNAP assistance. In comparison, 7% of all households countywide received SNAP assistance. Looking at households with children by type, those with children headed by a female with no spouse present had the highest rate at 24%, while only 6% of married couple households with children received assistance. This pattern reflects those seen for median income and poverty rates by household type. Another form of public assistance that specifically benefits low-income children is the Free and Reduced Price Meals, or FARMS program. The FARMS program is only available to public school students. In the 2024 school year, 40% of all students were enrolled in FARMS. Among this 40% of students, the majority, or 47%, were in elementary school, 22% in middle school, and 31% in high school. Since 2010, the percentage of students enrolled in the FARMS program has increased at all school levels. While the FARMS enrollment rate at the elementary school level continued to be the highest, the increase at the high school level was the greatest, with the enrollment rate growing from 24% to 38% from 2010 to 2024.
Can you remind us what the income threshold is for eligibility for farm? I assume it's income-based, right? Do we know that?
We don't have that information right now, but we can get back to you on that.
Okay. I'd be curious, I assume that it's not super, I'm just kind of curious because I assume that that threshold probably hasn't, maybe it's pegged to inflation or something. I'm sure maybe it goes up over time. I'm just, this is interesting to see that this trend, obviously, particularly when household incomes for households with children is also higher than the countywide median. So it makes me wonder sort of, yeah, it just kind of introduces more questions about what may be happening here. Obviously, the demographics of public school students are different than the private school students, almost certainly. So that's a factor. But this is interesting to see, and it's obviously kind of not great in the grand scheme of things. But yeah.
Yeah, it's set to a percentage above federal poverty.
Percentage of poverty level.
Percentage of poverty level, yeah.
And the poverty level probably gets, I guess it gets adjusted every year.
It's adjusted annually, yeah.
Annually, yeah.
And it's based on household size.
It's 100%, a percentage over 100 of the federal poverty level, but I don't remember what it is.
Got it.
I'm sure we can look it up, but yeah, it's not terribly high above, but it is over the poverty level.
Yeah, thank you. I did not have the information for the exact numbers for the cutoff. So
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. I was just curious. Thanks.
thank you.
So before we end this briefing, we would like to highlight some potential future research questions. The analysis presented in this report discusses the past and gives us some possible insight into the future. From our findings, we developed the following research questions, which are not an exhaustive list. Firstly, how do the characteristics of the child population and households with children vary across Montgomery County? To what extent are recent changes in the age distribution driven by fertility trends versus migration patterns? Is the lower percentage of children living in large multifamily buildings driven by smaller apartment sizes or other reasons? How has the composition of households with children and the distribution of income of this household type changed over time? And lastly, Are rising housing costs influencing where families with children choose to live within the county, and in what type of housing? That concludes our presentation on the demographic characteristics of children in Montgomery County. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate you working, being a graduate research assistant with Planning Department and for this information. So do I have any questions or comments from some of the board members? Okay,
Yes.
please.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting information. You know, children are our future. So when we see what is happening and where our children go, it sort of shows the direction where the community and the country is going. I know that we are, one of the goals that we are, for providing affordable housing, we have a big push in regard to multifamily building. I am wondering that if there is a way, because that was one of the topics that you had in regard to future research, that the more affordable housing, that means that more multiple family building. Is that going to end up to discourage couples to have more children? That's something that I think it would be interesting to know, because when there is smaller units, smaller places where kids, most of the family with children, right now, they are concentrated mostly in the single family units. What's going to happen if this pattern change? And is one of these changes due to the type of the housing? This is something that I think it would be nice to see, because it would be something that is an unintended consequence of something that we try to do. Is it going to impact it? Is it going to make the future to be more smaller families because it's a smaller footprint for the people to grow and raise their children? Is it going to make it more difficult? So they decide that either no children or just one. So that's something that I like to see. Also, I had another question when you had the private school versus the public school. I couldn't figure out, maybe it's something with the numbers, that, well, we have a bigger elementary school percentage, and then we have a better high school, but then suddenly the middle school reduces. The pie for the middle school is much smaller. Well, all of those kids have to go to the middle school before they go to high school. How is that possible? What does that mean? That didn't make sense to me. Maybe you could explain that.
Yeah, would you like for us to go back to that
Yeah.
slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go back to that slide. Yeah, the
I think
percentages
it's like
are.
10 or 9.
Yeah, the percentages are, we did not think it was that big of a difference. So yes, 41% versus 43%. So yeah, so the 41% is out of all the private school enrollment, and then the 43% is out of all
No,
of the
I'm not
public
talking
school.
about private. Just pick one. Let's go to the public side, okay, on the left side. The elementary school, 43% are in elementary school, and then 34% in high school. What's going to happen when they go to the middle school? Why the percentage rates to almost half? Where are they going? Because I don't see the rate for the private gets more. So where are they? Okay.
I think part of the answer is how you're, what grades you're counting as part of elementary school versus high school. So elementary school, typically 1 through 5, and then 9 through 12 for high school. So you have actually 4 grades for public high school, 5 grades for elementary school. So that might be part of the difference right there. Because you're looking at there's not the same number of grades for public school versus, for elementary school versus middle school for high school. I think that's the question you're, or
Well,
the
I'm
answer
saying
you're-
that, let's just say that you have 10,000 elementary school, okay? And then what happens that, because 23% is maybe 5,000 for the middle school. The blue is middle school, isn't it? Yeah. So why the rate suddenly reduces the same?
Yeah, so it's, as James was saying, there's not a uniform distribution in the number of grades in each category. So public elementary schools are typically K through 5, and then middle schools are 6, 7, 8. So if you assume the same number of students per grade, it's fewer students in middle school.
4 grades in high school.
And then 4 grades in high
5 or 6
school.
in elementary.
Yeah,
too.
so that's why we wouldn't expect each of these to be a third, because middle schools are smaller.
Yeah, and I would imagine we're probably at the point where a dip in the COVID child size also is hitting middle school right now. 6, 7, 8. It's probably at least some contributor to that as well.
Other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
So when we, first of all, I appreciate your presentation. You do an outstanding job. You're going to be an outstanding professional. And one of the questions that I always have when we get these kind of data presentations is, how can we best use it to make decisions in the best interest of the citizens of Montgomery County? And so you give us this information with regards to the demographics of the students, the increase in the population, racial, ethnicity, socioeconomic, and I'm always interested in, when you supply this information, how would you recommend us using it? And I think that's important. You guys are experts at it, you know it better than us, and you provided it to us. How would you suggest we use it? Thanks.
Well, let's go ahead and forward to the next to the last slide. So we did present some potential future research questions, and these align with some of the things that we want to do as a county to encourage more, more families to settle in Montgomery County, more people to have children. How can we, for example, build the right type of housing for families with children? What sort of amenities do we need to have in our communities to encourage people to come to, to come live in Montgomery County and have children here? So, and this goes beyond housing. So this goes, beyond housing to things like our parks facilities, for example. Childcare. We have a childcare facility that is being built right now. So some of these questions in terms of what do we do with it, and how do we turn it into more policy-driven types of decisions? Let's look at the data and see what it tells us, and look at other factors that might be influencing or affecting the numbers as well. So not sure if that quite gets to maybe what your question is getting at.
It is helpful. Do you share this information with other divisions in planning and ask them to incorporate it in their decision-making?
We always do for example, for our existing conditions analysis, age and household type are core demographic pieces of information.
I just had a quick question back on the pie chart with the public and private schooling. I think I'm assuming the gap between the 243-ish thousand students and the 175 is kids under the age of 5. Is that the primary difference between, this would be about 180,000 kids, and I think earlier was 243,000 under 18.
Actually, something important to note here, it's at the bottom of the slide, but I neglected to point it out, is that this does include a small number of students over 18 years old.
Okay.
So that might also be contributing to it.
Yeah. Well, I think earlier in the in the presentation, it was 243,000 residents under the age of 18, and we have a combined here of 180,000. So I was wondering what the gap between those two numbers was. I assume it's children not enrolled, but
Yeah, maybe partly people under five, kids under five.
yeah,
Although I don't know if that would account for, it's a pretty large number for just kids under
it would be
five.
60. Yeah, it would be
1,000 people.
approximately a quarter of.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, maybe it would be approximately a quarter.
Kim, let's go back to the age distribution
Yeah.
of children. So let's take a look at that. I'm sorry, can you go ahead?
There's probably also some amount of kids over 16 and under 18 who are no longer enrolled. Although that may be
That would
marginal.
be more marginal. But yeah, it looks like to be, sorry, yeah, and here's the age distribution over time. It looks to be about a quarter of that number, which would be roughly equivalent to of 0 to 4 years. Looks about right.
And we didn't put in the presentation, but yeah, figure 2 in the report, actually, the physical report has the numbers, as well as the percentages are in figure 3.
yeah,
So
I
then you
just-
can see how it breaks down.
Yeah, I was trying to say, there's not, there's not currently like a very large cohort, like age cohort within here that is skewing the distribution particularly. It's roughly around there. Yeah, I was just curious on the discrepancy in the numbers there. I assume we take that into account for planning purposes and when we talk to MCPS. No, that's all I have.
Yeah, and as Carrie pointed out, the profile itself actually has a separate chart that shows the number, the absolute number of people by age, and it's 60,233.
Okay, great, yeah, no.
Under 5.
Okay, why don't we have a couple more questions, and we'll go on to our next presentation, okay?
One additional thought, kind of related to what Commissioner Bartley was asking about, sort of applicability or understanding kind of relating it to some decision-making. I think maybe one additional interesting research question related to a lot of the ones that you've already talked about could be understanding the full cost of living and basically, what percentage over poverty what income do you need to satisfy your basic needs, like a basic needs under analysis understanding and relating that to income, and then relating that to households with children. Because you mentioned before that like household incomes are higher for households with children, but also households with children have additional costs. And, from a planning standpoint, I think understanding where those costs fall, it could be really useful when we think about, obviously with housing, of course, as we always talk about, but with transportation and amenities and proximity and sort of what do we need to make people's lives easier and more, generally more affordable. What planning tools do we have at our disposal to sort of specifically relate to that? So that could be one interesting question. And I don't, University of Maryland, for example, like there might be academic institutions that have done that kind of research that we could leverage. I don't know what may have been done locally. I know other states have done some of that at a statewide level, but that could be an interesting question to answer in the future.
So just to wrap it up here, thank you again. This is very important data to have, and also how it's also used, maybe sending it to other county agencies. They may use it for some of their planning, because what I was focused on through your analysis and reading was that, they said 14% of households are managed by single women with, and so that's 14%, and then you also showed how that cohort made the least amount of income. It was only $54,000, and so maybe it's not another question that we have, but how do we support that cohort better, right? So that for housing, get good daycare, for education of that parent, I don't know, what type of job do they have? How do we raise their standard of living, right? So that they have as many opportunities as others, right? And I think that's how we could give this to other agencies in the county. That's a question for them, what in terms of HHS or the housing department, DHCA, or, I don't know, in job-related, where can we provide those opportunities? And also this, in the olden days, I'm just thinking olden days, an apartment was people transitioned from apartments to home ownership. And I don't know, is there some study, like, is that happening as much today? So that, because where you transition, you build apartment, home ownership, build equity. That equities allows you to do things, help educate your kids better. I mean, you can send, maybe, or other things that you can send your kids to college or whatever, or help plan for the future. Is that, is that transition still happening or happening at a lower pace than in the past? Because I grew up in public housing my first couple of years. My mom was a school teacher, and at the time in Chicago, the teachers couldn't work during that first 2 years, and my father was doing apprenticeship school for a plumber, so he didn't get us, a high-paying job. So we were very lucky and happy to be able to go in public housing for a couple years. And my dad got his plumbing license. My mother could go back to, being a teacher, and the rest is history. So I don't want to know what is the progression today. Okay, an idea. So thank you so much. Wonderful report. Please continue the great work. Thank you. So we're going to take a 2-minute break and then start with our next item, which is item number 5, Montgomery Pearl Sketch Plan, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. Thank you. Good morning again. We're on item number 5, Montgomery Pearl Sketch Plan, where staff is recommending approval with conditions. And this morning, we have Jess Server with the Planning Department presenting this item. Welcome, Mr. Server.
Good morning, members of the board. For the record, my name is Jeff Server with the West County Division. Before you today is the Montgomery Pearl Sketch Plan application number 32026-0020. Staff's recommending approval with conditions for the sketch plan. It proposes up to 703,000 square feet of total density. It's a mixed-use development that would have up to 625,000 square feet of multifamily residential, 15% MPDUs, and up to 78,000 square feet of commercial development. It would include a little over 73,000 square feet of BOS density that would have an associated park impact payment. The project's located in downtown Bethesda. It's, you can see in the yellow star in the map to the right. It's subject to the 2017 Bethesda Downtown Sector Plan and the 2025 Bethesda Downtown Minor Master Plan Amendment. The location is within the Pearl District in downtown Bethesda. This is shown in the image in the lower right. The dashed red line denotes the property boundaries. It's specifically at the southwest and southeast quadrants where Pearl Street and Montgomery Avenue intersect. There are a number of different zones that make up this property. You can see them listed below rather than reading each one. The image in the upper right shows the different zones that make up the property. In total, it accounts for 3.81 tract acres. Looking at the existing conditions of the property, it is currently improved in that it has 2 existing office buildings and a private health club. Image number 1 is taken at the intersection of Pearl Street and Montgomery Avenue. That is looking towards one of the office buildings. Image 2 in the lower left is showing the private health club as it exists today. As I mentioned before, the proposal is for up to 703,000 square feet. Again, I won't go through all of this again, but you can see the breakouts for the overall residential development that's proposed and then the overall commercial development that is proposed along with the BOS density. The application also is including a number of public open space requirements, and that Pearl Street would be developed as a shared street that would include an urban plaza. There would be structured parking provided for the 3 buildings, and they would be undergrounding their utilities along the frontages along Montgomery Avenue. Looking at the proposal in more detail, the massing has been developed with 3 buildings. So these have been identified as the West Building, the Central Building, and the East Building. The West would have a max height of about 52 feet, would include 110 units along with ground floor commercial retail. The Central Building would vary in height from 145 feet along the western edge along Pearl Street, and then stepping down to 120 feet on the eastern edge. This would account for about 210 of those residential units, and this would include a new health club. And then the East Building would have a maximum height of 120 feet, and this would include 270 units. So this view on the left is looking towards kind of that corner near Pearl Street. And also worth noting is that these 3 buildings also face out and are aligned and adjacent to the Capitol Crescent Trail and the future Purple Line. The image to the right is showing the massing as you would see it if you were along Montgomery Avenue, looking at the West Building, Central Building, and East Buildings. The massing of these buildings was done in such a manner that they create a series of terraces which step back. And doing that was done for a number of reasons, but the primary reason was to try to respect the residential development that is adjacent across in the town of Chevy Chase, so on the other side of the Purple Line. So stepping these back provides really nice views, but also removes and pulls some of that massing and that density back, so that it's not towering over those other units. The Bethesda panel voted 5-0, on track to keep this to receive 10 design excellence points as required by the BOS. And looking at access.
I'm sorry, Jeff, can we go back?
Yes,
just
sorry.
one slide. There was a question earlier, Elza Heisel McCoy, Chief West County Planning, for the record. In terms of what the grade is doing here, you have Montgomery Avenue, Pearl Street from Montgomery slopes down to the trail about 6 feet, so there'll be some steps at the end of Pearl Street to come up to the trail. From the Capitol Crescent Trail down to the purple line, so you can see just to the west, the Capitol Crescent Trail will just have gone over the purple line. So it's there's a drop of about let's call it 12 to 15 feet down to the purple line, and then from the purple line to Elm Street Park below is another sort of 2 to 3 stories. The grade here is doing a lot of things. This is Bethesda, and so there's a lot of sloping towards where the train tracks used to be. As the purple line and the trail continue east from Bethesda, the grade separation diminishes.
Do you have another slide that shows the height of the existing buildings in comparison with this proposed massing and height?
We don't. I think the existing office building on the corner of Pearl is 3 stories, and I want to say the health club is probably around 40 or 50 feet.
Yeah, on the east side, on your zoning chart, you were showing that the east side is, the maximum height is 35. Yeah, if you look at, it says height 35 on the, so it's a little bit confusing for me that why we have the maximum height of the east building 120 when the one just next door is 35. Is that correct?
So these were the zoning heights that were established as part of the 2017 plan. The development on the south side of Montgomery, as you move east of Pearl towards East-West Highway, are single-family structures predominantly used as small businesses. When you get up to East-West Highway, there's a taller condo building, but most of the buildings that are shown in that 35, some of them have been torn down now. The Parks Department has been purchasing property there for a park, and there's also a Purple Line staging area. I think there may be a traction substation there in the future. So the area to the east of this will essentially be park and service area. And then as you get up to East-West Highway, I want to say the condo on the corner there is like 6 or 8 stories.
Okay, so there is nothing next to it. It's going to be built then. That's what I'm hearing.
They'll basically, yeah, I mean, there'll be a park.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question is that the west building can go, the height could go up to 175, but the maximum would be just 50, I think. The west building, the maximum height would be small, very little.
So we've been working with this team for a while, and there are restrictions with the air rights building to the west in terms of views, and the applicant can certainly provide more detail. But I think the scale of that building is in line with meeting the requirements of the air rights buildings to the west.
So the air rights building is
Okay.
dictating the height of this
No,
building?
I think, so it's been a while, and Ms. Harris can certainly, but I think there are restrictions about blocking views. So basically, right now, they're lining the air rights parking garage, and then, so the windows above that can't be blocked. So I think it's that sort of arrangement.
Okay, thank you for explaining about the grades, and so we'll let you get back to your presentation, and then we'll have the applicant present too.
Okay, thank you. And looking at the access and circulation of the site, this image summarizes the different modes of access for the site. So in blue, it's denoting and identifying where the vehicular routes are. All the parking will be provided as structured parking at the base of the buildings. You can see where Pearl Street is located at, that becomes a shared street, but also includes access to the garage within the west building. Same with what is identified as the mid-block connection, which I'll be talking about in a moment. That provides access for loading as well as access to the garages. Down along the southern edge of the property, shaded in yellow, is where the Capitol Crescent Trail is, and that's denoting where there are pedestrian routes, and the circles are identifying nodes or points of access where down along the southern edges you have opportunities to connect to the Capitol Crescent Trail. Looking at this in more detail, as proposed, there's a shared street, so Pearl Street would be developed as a shared street. This would include a range of different hardscape paving materials, opportunities to provide seating arrangements, new street trees, and also what's being referred to as kind of an urban plaza or connection. So it would have a monumental terrace staircase that provides a physical connection directly to the Capitol Crescent Trail, and that's sort of the terminus of this Pearl Street shared street approach. The images that you see, the number one is a diagram exploring this and then providing some precedent images of what that might possibly look like. The mid-block connection is provided between the central building and east building. It was the one I was just describing that's providing access for the garages as well as loading. This would connect to a terrace sort of pocket park, which also then connects to that area down along the south, providing an interfacing connection also with the Capitol Crescent Trail. But the images to the right are also identifying some precedents or ideas of what that might possibly look like as well. Looking at the open space, the application will provide public open space. It meets that requirement of 10%. So they're proposing a little over 12,000 square feet of public open space. This includes the shared street that we were just looking at, that mid-block connection, which has that terraced pocket park, the urban plaza that would connect to the Capitol Crescent Trail, there's a linear landscape park, which is essentially an extension all along that southern edge of landscaping and public space, and then also enhanced streetscapes all along Pearl Street and Montgomery Avenue. And these are shown in the image to the right, in the upper and lower right.
Sorry, can I ask one question about the image, just real quick?
Yeah.
Are those, so looking at the bottom image, are those circles on the CCT access points?
Correct.
They're all access points?
Yeah, those are all access points to the
Okay.
Capitol Crescent Trail.
That's great, thank you.
Looking at the environmental features, there are no environmentally sensitive features here. In this image to the right, the dashed blue line that's shown is showing the center line of the stream valley, and then the blue line that extends is showing the stream valley buffer. The site is primarily going to be impervious, and has limited stormwater management needs. There's an off-site stream on the south side of the purple line, but no on-site stream valley buffers, and there are no forest or specimen trees present on the site. Looking at public benefits, this application has been reviewed under the updated public benefits system. It's looking at 3 categories. It's looking at environmental resilience for energy efficiency, infrastructure for compact growth, for public facilities, and then under complete communities for design excellence. The final determination of these categories and tiers will be established when they move into site plan. The applicant has met all the noticing requirements for posting of signs and application, or notice of application. A public hearing was mailed by staff. We have received correspondence on this item, one letter expressing support for the development, and then we did receive correspondence with the concerns listed below about traffic impacts, the suitability for that site for the proposed project, relationship for the development to the homes in Chevy Chase. What I can say about all of these is each of these issues will be evaluated in greater detail as it moves forward into preliminary and site plan. Each of these actual topics will be explored in depth.
So the course, just to clarify, the correspondence with these concerns, that was a single letter.
There was a single letter which expressed support for the project. Then there were 2 additional letters which basically expressed concern about the suitability of this. Was this the right site for this project? And then we received correspondence after the posting from the town of Chevy Chase, also expressing concerns, which was provided to the chair's office as well.
Okay, thanks. The no amenities concern and listed at the bottom, we've talked about how they intend to have a health club, right, in one of the buildings, I think the central building. You know, it's obviously proximate to the CCT and Purple Line, among many other things. I'm not sure that this is a concern that we need to, this doesn't really, to me, reflect what the project that I just reviewed and we just discussed. So I appreciate that you're gonna kind of go through these one by one, but I think that at least a few of them don't appear to relate to the project that we're reviewing, or I think are easy to sort of communicate back to say, you know, here's actually what we're looking at, right?
Yeah. So in summary, the applicant has satisfied the zoning ordinance. The application satisfies the zoning ordinance as applicable. It conforms with the master plans as conditioned, and staff recommends approval of the sketch plan with conditions as noted in the staff report.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Server. And then we have one person to make a presentation, testimony, Barney Rush, Mayor, Town of Chevy Chase. Mr. Rush, please, you're welcome. Come up. You have 6 minutes to provide your testimony.
Okay. Chair Harris and members of the Planning Board, thank you for this opportunity to appear before you regarding the Montgomery Pearl sketch plan. The site sits just across the Purple Line from our town along its northern border, and our residents will live with the impact of this redevelopment for decades. We therefore appreciate the opportunity to share the town's perspective at this early stage of planning review. The town has filed written testimony, and my remarks this morning draw from that submission. In general, the town is supportive of the sketch plan concept, and in particular, the use of step backs to reduce the massing of the buildings toward the rear of the south elevation. It reflects the care your predecessors have shown in putting into the zoning code the compatibility requirements that this project adheres to. As a result, this project reflects a thoughtful transition between the high-density Bethesda downtown plan area and our established residential neighborhood. We offer the following specific requests with respect to the sketch plan. First, on privacy. Town residents have expressed concerns about privacy, particularly about views from the project apartments into the rear yards of homes along the town's northern border, right along the Capitol Crescent, the Purple Line. The 4x4 step-back design for many of the units in this building may mitigate this concern, as it appears that project residents within the apartments would therefore have a limited downward view into town properties. We request that the applicant confirm that this is the case as part of the site plan submission. This feature of the design is important to us, and we ask that it be preserved as the project advances through subsequent reviews. Second, on building height, we request that the height of the rear south elevation of the building, currently shown as 35 feet, be explicitly limited to that height as a condition of sketch plan approval. Third, on noise mitigation, there are two aspects to this issue. We request that a noise-suppressing and opaque screen be installed along the outside edge of the large terrace on the southern facade of the central building, which includes the swimming pool, and also along the southern facade of the east building terrace, if that area is also designed to be open to residents. Town residents report that noise from the existing tennis courts of the existing health club on the site carry into their property. The more intensive use contemplated for a rooftop pool and terraces warrants meaningful acoustic mitigation. In addition, once the facility is in operation, we will look for clear operating regulations and management practices that hold noise from the southern terraces of the central and east buildings, including the pool, to acceptable levels throughout the day. We ask that this condition be memorialized as a binding element. Finally, on outdoor lighting, we request that all outdoor lighting on the terraces, pool deck, and the residential balconies be designed to direct light downward onto these surfaces and not outward into the town of Chevy Chase. I would also like to add a couple of comments on two matters that, while not properly the subject of sketch plan review, we would like to raise now so that they receive appropriate attention as the project moves forward through site plan and building permit stages. First, we'll ask that the construction management agreement that the county and applicant will enter into require strict adherence to the county's noise ordinance, prohibit early morning and late evening work, and address dust, debris, and traffic management. This agreement should also establish a clear protocol by which residents may express concerns and grievances and receive timely responses throughout the duration of construction. Second, the site lies along a pedestrian route from the Capitol Crescent Trail up Pearl Street to Montgomery Avenue. Due to the adjacent CCT bridge across the tracks that will link the town to East Bethesda, this route will be heavily used, especially by students who will be walking to BCC High School. We ask that the construction plan keep this path open or some access up to Montgomery Avenue to the greatest extent practical through the construction period. The town appreciates the Planning Board's consideration of these comments. If our recommendations are accepted, we believe that the applicant will have a project that is exciting and enhances the development of Bethesda, yet remains sensitive to the legitimate issues that arise on such transition parcels that mark the line between high-rise development and low-rise neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rush, for your presentation. We're going to have the applicant come up and present their presentation. Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Sure. Happy to be here. Should I return or are you going to stay?
Good morning. Pat Harris with Lurch, Early and Brewer here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant being ProMark and Rob Eisinger from ProMark is here. We also have Pat LeVay from MHG, and then our architect, Ben Yance from BKV Group, and then some of our other team is both in the audience and attending virtually. We're very excited to bring this project to you. As staff said, we've worked on it for a very long time. I would say that it's somewhat of a game changer for this area of Bethesda. There has been no activity in this area since the 2017 sector plan was adopted. And as I've said several times, I think this project will be transformational. I mean, it's a really exciting project. What I want to do first is address a couple of Mayor Rush's comments, and then I'll get into our prepared remarks. So we reached out early to the town. We offered to meet with them individually. We ended up just meeting with some of their folks at our standard meeting, but we'll continue the dialogue with the town. Once we get into the site plan process, we're happy to focus on the details that they requested. It's really too early at this point in the process to focus on what our screening's going to look like. Two things I did want to note specifically, though. One was the comment that the buildings remain 35 feet in height along the southern edge. They're not currently 35 feet in height. They're a little bit taller than that if you look at the section. But what we do is comply with the height and setback compatibility standards, which say that you take the measurement from the property line and you draw an angular plane of 45 degrees. And what we can assure you is going forward, we will definitely be below that 45-degree plane. So I just wanted to clear up that misunderstanding. Second of all, in terms of just noise and light, one thing to keep in mind is our residents are going to be closer to any noise source than what the town will be. I mean, their houses are an average of 150 feet away from the back of the building. And then, as you know, we step back, so that distance increases further. Given that we will have residents right there closer to any noise source than the town is, we will obviously be paying special attention to that issue. So I think the town can be rest assured that we have those issues in mind. We worked out over more than a half a dozen meetings with planning, and also DOT attended most of those, the issues, the important issues of this project. We're very grateful to staff. They provided great feedback. And over the last, I believe it was 3 years that we've been working on this. We accept all the conditions of approval. There is one request that we do have, and that is we would like for condition 8, which says we accept the letter from DOT, to be a little bit more specific in terms of both the right-of-way width for Pearl Street and the allowing egress onto Pearl Street. And I've put up on the screen what our suggested language is. And if I could, I wanted to explain just for a moment why that's important. So to date, we have spent more than $500,000, well, I shouldn't say we, the applicant has spent more than $500,000 getting to this point. It's an expensive process, and then we go to the next stage, which is the preliminary plan and site plan. It's going to be even more expensive. So one of the reasons or purposes of the sketch plan is to start to identify some of these basic criteria of a project. And in this case, the width of the Pearl Street right-of-way, which is proposed for 50 feet, and allowing egress onto Pearl Street from the central building are essential. And I'll get into a moment, or I'll explain why those are important. So in terms of the egress issue, hold on one moment. So if you can see, okay, if you can see on the screen, Montgomery Avenue is eastbound. And so currently, without the Pearl Street egress, one would have to go approximately a half a mile all the way around the block to the north to get onto Wisconsin Avenue, heading either north or south. And for anyone that's done anything in the morning and you're on a schedule, whether that's leaving for an early morning meeting at 7:30 or leaving a health club, a 10 or 15-minute delay of going this circuitous route is a very significant factor. What exacerbates this is the fact that the BCC High School's there. And so between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning, there is a 10 or 15-minute delay every morning. And so allowing the egress onto Pearl Street would allow for a more efficient vehicular route, and it eliminates, it allows for a more efficient route. We were pleased that the staff report actually in 2 places notes that there's egress onto Pearl Street, and the circulation route showed it as well. But we just feel that at this point in time, it's important to have that as a condition that it's permitted because it's an important factor of the project. The other issue is the 50-foot right-of-way for Pearl Street. So Pearl Street is it's a dead-end street, as you know, has very limited activity. And the 50 feet is important for 2 major reasons. One is that the parcel to the west parcel, is only approximately 50 feet in width as it is. So to increase that right-of-way essentially renders that parcel useless. And then on the other side, on the east side, we have the health club, and it has obviously standards for the health club footprint, which are already being squeezed, frankly. And because to the east of the health club, between the central building and the east building, we have a WSSC right-of-way, that easement that we can't encroach upon, we really are limited. So those 2 factors, plus the fact that we believe, given the limited use of Pearl Street, the 50 feet is acceptable. In the course of our many meetings with DOT and planning, there was recognition or agreement to these things. In fact, we have minutes reflecting it. But again, we just think it's important to include in the sketch plan conditions that there's agreement to the 50-foot right-of-way and the egress onto Pearl Street.
So just so I understand, the egress on the Pearl Street, so that you want to be able to do the yellow movement there versus the orange movement going around, is that what it is?
Correct, yes, which we believe just dumps more cars unnecessarily onto more roadway length.
And then the DOT did not want it more than a 50-foot, right?
No, they actually agreed. What they said is they said we defer to planning on this, and they appeared to be acceptable, that it was acceptable. But in their letter, they don't say one way or another, but they note that the standard width is 60 feet. That they just make a statement. Now, I will point out that what shared streets say, and this is a shared street, that it suggests a minimum of 30 foot right away, and then it says a 60-foot right away is a default. But again, and I don't think I'm putting words in anyone's mouth, there were agreement on both of those issues, but there wasn't but they're not in the staff report conditions.
Is staff fine with those two recommendations?
Sure, I'll weigh in, and if need be, I'll defer to others. So regarding the 60-foot right-of-way width, the reason that wasn't included, I know when we were doing our coordination, we discussed it, and we did coordinate with DOT on that. And the thing is, the right-of-way width isn't actually set with the sketch plan. That is actually set at the time of preliminary plan. So it's not something that would ordinarily be locked down at this early stage with the sketch plan.
And I would also say, to sort of, as Ms. Harris pointed out, I don't think that DOT has provided definitive direction on this. I think, and we have Florence Dwyer from the transportation team here to provide more detail, but this is an important conversation as Ms. Harris has identified, and it's a conversation that we fully intend to have at the appropriate time, which is preliminary plan, which is when all the transportation agencies can discuss the matter in a fulsome way.
If I may, again, there were at least 6 meetings, and the reason there were 6 meetings was because this was such an important issue. We have minutes from January of 2025 that sets forth that, and we sent them to both DOT and Park and Planning, that it was reflected that the 50 feet was acceptable. I'd even note that I think it was Paul Mortensen made the point, well, the 50 feet certainly seems reasonable, and if you think about it, the building on the west building's 50 feet tall, you know, that provides a nice sort of relationship of building height to street width. The other thing I'd ask the board to consider is if we had filed a pre-preliminary, just a different application, this issue could have been nailed down. I don't know that this sketch plan process is that much different. And again, speaking for the applicant, the issue of whether it's 50 feet or 60 feet could make or break this project in terms of whether the health club can go there with a squeezed footprint. And the health club is what's driving the finances and making this project possible. You probably have not seen very many multifamily projects lately. There's a reason for that, and this is just a unique opportunity because of the health club being a financial component of it.
So can I ask one question? So I understand I think I understand what you're saying, that typically this is not hashed out at sketch. But from our perspective, is there a downside to including some language about either a strong preference or acknowledging what this means for the feasibility of the project in some way? I mean, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like having this established now could add certainty heading into preliminary plan that can make that process maybe easier to get through, or it just impacts your design choices right now. I'm just wondering, is there a downside from our perspective, even though it's atypical?
I'll just jump in real quickly here, and then Richard, if you want to as well. I would just note, we don't necessarily disagree with the importance of this, or that this has been talked about in prior meetings, or we may not even disagree with this. It's just this isn't the time where we typically do talk about this. And I would note, I don't think we have anyone from DOT or on the line with us today to be able to validate their position on this. And so, I think our request would be that we just handle this or put this in at the appropriate time.
Well, okay, I hear you. Why don't we go through the rest of this, the whole piece, and come back to this as the whole big picture, but duly note, okay, go ahead.
Oh, do you want me to finish the presentation?
Yeah, finish
Okay,
the
and we're almost done. The one thing, just to note, though, I would say it's my understanding that it's Park and Planning, not DOT, that's ultimately determining the width of the right-of-way. Okay, so then just one other thing, and this is really just for site plan purposes. We want to get people's minds thinking about this. As staff described and showed, At the terminus of Pearl Street, we are proposing monument stairs, which we believe are a really important placemaking component of this project. What you see on the screen now is what is being proposed by, some of the construction, but also the ramp that's being constructed by the Purple Line folks. Here is an example, or is the image of what the terminus could look like, with sort of examples in the 3 circles at the bottom. And then if the stairs are not permitted, then it looks just a little bare and utilitarian. And so we've had this discussion with DOT sort of to set the stage that either our hope is that they could agree to some type of maintenance and liability agreement so that we would take responsibility for the stairs, or if need be, a very partial abandonment of that end of Pearl Street, which is just 800 feet. But what we want to get DOT thinking about now is sort of the need for flexibility and creativity so that this important placemaking feature can actually land at the end of the street. I think it makes all the difference in the project. So with that, and with our requested change, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's amazing proposed project at a location that, near mass transit in the downtown area, next to, in addition to your open space, it's the park. Is the park's open space immediately to the east of this? Is that what it is? Mr. Server, do you know? Is the park space immediately to the east of this project?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. So, yep, and it sort of completes that area there, and it looks like a great project. I know there's some details that need to be ironed out as you go forward. My preference is, like the Vice Chair said, is that to provide a strong push that we would want to have in order to make this project happen, because it's also like the economic development as well as the housing and things like that, and what makes the project work. If it's needed, that the right-of-way is a bit shorter, and then less wide, so that the feature of the health club can go in, as well as it's not narrowed so much where, it's so wide that you can't do the housing on the other side. I would want that to make sure that we look at all, those are all the considerations, and it's in addition to what's a standard width of the road. So that would be my recommendation, but I'm going to hear from other folks, because I do believe in providing some certainty for the applicant to move forward, and at the same time, and I know there's competing requirements here, but I just wanted to make sure that the one competing requirement is that the project move forward. Right? So that would be my recommendation, but I'd love to hear from the other board members.
So I have a question, is that why couldn't come up to a resolution with DOT after we have met with them for 4 or 5 times? Why do we have to wait for future stages if it is important to applicant to get some resolution for some items that it happens for this project is the Pearl Street right away, and this apparently has been discussed. I understand that usually it's gone to the next stage, but if an applicant wants, it is important for them at the very preliminary stage, they just said it that $500,000 has already spent. So it's a lot of investment has put at the very early stage. And if it is important for them to get some issues decided at the very beginning, and the meeting has been held 5 or 6 times with DOT, why we couldn't come to a resolution to give them what they want, if everybody agrees?
For the record, Richard Brockmeyer, Transportation Planning Supervisor. I think the concern is precedent. That is just not something that we typically approve at the time of a sketch plan. I think the concern would be that this is something that we're now going to be asked to do at sketch plan, which is just not the stage that we're at. This is something we will consider. We have had discussions with DOT that will be further discussed at the preliminary plan stage, but I think the major concern is precedent.
I know, but that's not good enough. If it is detrimental, see that the precedent comes that if you just do it on a normal review for every project. This one, I don't think that would put a precedence because it may be detrimental to the next stages. That's how they do. You don't want them to spend more money and come back and, things change that makes it more difficult.
I think the concern would be that I think a number of projects could make that same case, that there's they're investing a lot at the sketch plan level. Again, the concern is the precedence.
Could I just say, Mr. Brock, what is needed so that everyone feels, like, what, is it some more design, what's needed in order to determine if all of this fits? And how fast can that, instead of having to do the whole preliminary plan to come with that determination? What's needed? Okay.
Well, let me just finish. I know, but I didn't finish. The thing is that if there are a lot of other projects that they come and ask for the same thing at the early stage, then maybe we have to modify our process that allows certain things to be decided earlier. I do not know if that is a possibility, but if this is something that other projects, that applicants that they're asking, then maybe we have to consider to do it earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not at that level of detail with a sketch plan. And the discussions are happening. We have had lots of meetings about it with MCDOT, with our staff. I don't think we're necessarily opposed to that right away, but that is just not something that we set at sketch plan traditionally.
Okay, so my question again is, when could this be resolved? A month, 2 months? What is all, I'm just trying to understand what is needed, or if we, as a board, said that it is our really strong preference is that you work with the applicant to make sure, that a 50-foot right-of-way can work in order to make sure that these other pieces of the puzzle, which is the housing on the west side and the communities, not the community center, but the sports club can work in there, are these other things.
So what I would suggest is that, I think the challenge of putting it in the resolution is that if there's something that's unforeseen, we've gone too far and we can't go back without amending the resolution. What we can do is start having having essentially preliminary plan level conversations now with MCDOT, and commit to doing that and then document that with a letter to the applicant so that it wouldn't be in the resolution, but we would essentially have the specific conversations we need. If we need additional information from the applicant, we can ask for that now, but essentially sort of do like a light version of DRC for this particular issue so we can do the proper coordination. This is a complex project, lots of moving pieces rather, and so if we had the opportunity to have those conversations, I think we could get them what they're looking for sooner, if not today.
Because I know there are a lot of other projects out there, and but something so large that would be a very expensive project to pull off. That it's good to work out those issues earlier, much earlier than later, and. So you're saying that you could, Mr. McCoy, you could have like sort of a process to work out this decision as quickly as possible.
So again, with MCDOT not on the call, it's challenging for us to commit to something, but I feel like we have the ability to get to a letter that would provide clear direction in the next couple of weeks. I can't be any more definitive than that, but I think we can sort of, and understanding that, you know, they're interested in moving forward, there's a lot of work they have to do to move forward, and that by the, you know, putting together the applications, whatever, they're probably at least a month out from submitting those applications. I think before that time, we would be able to have a letter from, or an email from DOT and planning staff that would resolve this issue.
And so just to clarify, that letter, the direction provided, ideally, the direction provided through that letter would specifically address, it would be a yes or no on the 50-foot question.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's yes or no with, see below.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, if that's, I think I'm okay with that. I think that when we come to preliminary plan, we will want to approve a 50-foot right-of-way, right, as part of that preliminary plan when it comes back, notwithstanding some unforeseen huge challenge that I think probably would have come up in the early conversations if that was the case. And it's within the range, it sounds like, of the shared street width from smaller to larger, from more narrow to wider. And we obviously want this project to happen. So I would expect the letter could be a yes, but like if we need to check our boxes in order to do that, then that's fine.
Yeah, and the goal is this, I appreciate you willing to work hard, very hard over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we want to check the box. Everyone wants more certainty, and I would really appreciate if that could happen, okay?
I have a comment. I appreciate this project. I appreciate you taking the risk and delivering something to the community there. It's much needed. There hasn't been much development in this area, and it's an exciting opportunity for the citizens of Montgomery County and the new citizens that may come here because of that development. I appreciate the fact that Ms. Harris pointed out the costs that you've initially invested in this project, and I appreciate the risk that you all are taking to deliver a great project, and I look forward to it moving ahead. Thanks.
Any other questions?
If the applicant is all right with the proposed solution, I am. I was going to ask to see the language proposed real quick on the condition again.
It essentially,
There we go.
it essentially says that the 50-foot right-of-way is acceptable and that egress, and again, only egress is permissible onto Pearl Street. And I do want to say, we are very appreciative, and we have been the entire process. Planning staff has been great on this project, and we appreciate their willingness to provide the level of certainty that's just really necessary with these very, very complex, expensive projects.
Is the question of egress more complicated in terms of putting it in this, like would this letter only focus on the 50-foot thing but not the egress question? I imagine that might be a more complicated question that MCDOT would want more time on.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have a little bit more time to talk about the egress issue.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you would focus on the egress issue with the models of, how would you resolve the egress issue?
Again, I don't want to speak for MCDOT, but they have raised that concern in their letter, and so we just want to talk through that with them, with the applicant, and come to an understanding on, what makes sense. I think they had some safety concerns, so I think we just want to talk through that with them, and that may take a little bit longer than the right-of-way question, because the right-of-way question has had more conversation initially.
Okay, but I think once we say the right-of-way question in the next couple of weeks, and then how can you also, it may not be a couple of weeks, but how do you how do you address this egress? Can you also put that on a fast track of the egress question? And this may not be the same 2 weeks, but we're just trying to, these are key things that.
The access issue is a DOT issue, so again, I don't want to speak for them in terms of a timeline.
But why, I mean, we could talk to the, but why haven't these things, well, on special projects, and like, I know there are certain projects have certain key issues, to get them moving forward, and you identify them early, but on a very large project with very key, I just want to make sure that we move these projects forward with certainty. Yeah.
I just want to explain, again, one of the reasons we had so many meetings was because these were so important to us. After that January meeting where there was agreement and we sent minutes memorializing that, and again, the staff report recognizes the egress and the 50-foot right-of-way. So when we got that DOT letter, we were sort of shocked, frankly. And so I want to make it clear that planning staff has been great on this issue, but I agree with you. When we read the DOT letter, we're like, that's not what was agreed to. So it was a little shocking.
Were they invited to this meeting or no?
So what was the date on DOT letter? Did we have time to work it out before this meeting, or at least get DOT to come here? When we saw that there is such a shocking reply from DOT, I don't know what was the date of it. Did we have a week or 10 days at least to discuss it with DOT, or invite them here that we could resolve it while we are here?
So another option would be to defer decision on this item today and do the work that we're talking about, and we wouldn't have to renotice, but come back in 2 weeks with recommendations from DOT on both of these issues.
No, that's not acceptable,
Yeah.
frankly. No, I don't think that works.
Okay, so why don't we just do this? Let's move forward. My recommendation, as we said before, the board would vote as is on this sketch plan with the caveat, Mr. Isel McCoy said that within 2 weeks, we'll push to get a decision on the right-of-way. And then we will also, during that time, also continue to push a decision on the egress. But I mean, if that gives you more, I know you want more certainty points, checking boxes, and I mean, that's the option too, and so that you don't, bring your team all the way back here, right? I mean, it's costly to bring the whole team back here in 2 weeks to do, to get another thing. So that would be my recommendation. Let's check this box with the caveat that we're also you're working with staff to have a letter in 2 weeks on the right-of-way, and then and continue to work very hard on the egress.
With the hope of ultimately getting a letter on the egress
Yes.
subsequently. That works.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to extend this further than we need to, but is there an option of adopting something similar to the language in the proposed language and the condition with, the caveat of in consultation with DOT, and to be, confirmed within the next period of time? I know we're getting we're writing on the fly here, and that's not a great idea, but.
So I would prefer that we keep this to what we typically address in sketch plans. I mean, one question could be how close are we to seeing a preliminary plan application coming in where this will have to be resolved? So it's not just on on us trying to move this forward. There are others who need to move this forward too, and things will be dealt with at the time when it's appropriate to be dealt with.
Okay, so when I was thinking, good question, I was thinking it would take a while to come back with a preliminary plan, but I don't know, how long would it take to come back with a preliminary plan?
Yeah, we have not started the preliminary plan or site plan process, so it's going to take a while.
Yes, it would take,
But again, we also don't want to invest millions of dollars in doing so if ultimately there's not some certainty.
Yeah, well, can we add sorry, go ahead.
Might have a suggestion. The condition that we're talking about is that, and it's our fairly standard condition, that the board's reviewed and accepted the recommendations of DOT in its letter April 2nd, which is the critical letter. And the applicant must comply, but it may be amended by DOT if the amendment does not conflict with any other conditions of the sketch plan approval. So clearly, although the DOT letter does say that the right-of-way is supposed to be 60 feet because that is what is in the master plan, but that is within the board's authority to determine the rights-of-way. And then it also says that access on Pearl Street should not be approved. Doesn't say can't and all those things. So it would seem that if the board wanted to just make clear, we don't need to modify this condition because it already says DOT can change it. If the board wanted to be clear in the resolution and the findings that they would support the reduced right-of-way, consistent with what DOT and staff finds to be safe and efficient, I think that could be done. And you're still instructing staff and DOT to go forward quickly to get this resolved. DOT can amend that letter, and it doesn't have to come back to the board. So that would allow the applicant to have that letter that's amended, and they can have the reduced right-of-way, and they would know that before they get to preliminary plan. We don't have to get all the way to preliminary plan to get them to amend that letter, if staff is okay with that and/or the applicant.
So how would you, go back to that condition and
You wouldn't need to change it at
Nothing to change,
all.
okay.
You would just, we would include in the resolution this sort of discussion a little bit and the findings that you're now making and what you'd like to see happen.
And we'd approve the resolution next week.
What about the egress?
And you'll see the resolution, obviously,
Yeah, as long
next
as-
week or the week after.
Yeah, what about the egress?
The
Because-
egress, that one seems more complicated. I don't know how quickly, but it could happen whenever. I mean, it says quickly as DOT. I don't even know if I would put a time frame on it because this really is going to involve the applicant getting back with DOT and transportation staff and getting them all to come up with a revised DOT letter. That's really what we need. But it doesn't really impact
No,
our
I
approval.
understand that, but there, this condition right now, because planning board can decide on the right-of-way, so we can just put the right-of-way 50 foot in here. The question is that I do not know if planning board can talk about the,
The access?
Yeah,
I think that's
egress.
a DOT jurisdiction.
so
That's not
that
us.
cannot be in the condition then.
Right, well, either way, we're not going to change the condition because the condition just references a DOT letter. So the DOT
Oh, I'm looking
letter-
at the
Oh,
condition
yeah,
of revised
I would not
condition.
revise it, I would not revise this.
Okay,
I would
so you're
keep the
not talking
condition.
about this, you're talking about the condition, so not the one that it is
Correct.
on the
I don't
screen.
think that it doesn't seem that staff is comfortable going here right now for what the applicant wants, but I'm not sure that we need to, because the letter itself can be amended without having to change the condition, and that could handle it. If staff agrees, that maybe that could work.
Can I ask clarifying question to whoever should clarify this question? We can establish the egress, or not the egress, I'm sorry, we can establish the right-of-way width on the board's behalf within the language of this condition. That's right, I believe. We don't want to do it to DOT, but we can. Is that right?
So, just to be clear, the DOT letter just states that as classified as a downtown street with 2 planned lanes, it has a 60-foot right-of-way. That's just what's in the master plan of highways and transitways. So
Yeah.
they are not saying it has to be 60 feet. The letter simply says what is in the master plan. But yes, the right-of-way width is within the board's purview to set. That is just typically something we determine at the time of
at a
preliminary
later
plan
period.
when we're talking about the rest of the cross-section.
Yeah, as a later period piece, and then the egress is the one that's more definitively within DOT's court.
And to clarify what the letter says, it says vehicular driveway access on Pearl Street is not recommended per the curbless and shared street guidelines. And then they ask for clarification if this is a full access driveway. So the letter doesn't even say that the access is not allowed, it just says it's not recommended in the guidelines.
And it actually says access, not egress.
Yes,
So again, that was part of our frustration, that it seemed like they didn't disagree with us, so why not put it in the condition?
Could I
Yeah,
ask one?
That's very strange, yeah.
To Ms. Vyas. So I think this recommendation's good, the discussion and the resolution. Could we also, in addition to the right-of-way, could we also express our preference for trying to make the egress work? You know, what I was going to say before the recommendation, I think this actually captures what I was thinking better, was just like here as part of the conversation, make it clear that like we are supportive of trying to make the egress work, so that, you know, assuming we're still around when you come back for the preliminary plan, like there's some level of confidence that we want to make it work and that we would approve it. But if we can formalize that even more in the resolution, even better. I don't want to preempt MCDOT analysis. I just want to state our preference in a way that's consistent with typical resolution language.
Sorry, but to piggyback on that, to make sure we're saying, our resolution would include some language that indicates we support a 50-foot right-of-way and egress, not egress access, that would be confusing, but egress onto Pearl Street, at which point they could update their letter and this could be a solved problem, essentially.
Right, and we could even
More or
request that staff work with DOT to amend the April 2nd letter, you know, as soon as possible.
What about, because this has been discussed a lot, and I do not know why DOT came like the way it came, I have no idea if they had agreed. So if they had agreed and they knew about this 50-foot right away and they've said it was okay, so we are not going over what they're saying, we are just making it clear. So we could at least in the resolution revise it in this condition to include the 50-foot right away. Regarding egress, looks like that was discussed less, correct? And it came later on.
I don't think that's accurate. I think both were discussed probably equally.
Equally?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back and think, but both
But
were
we don't have
important issues.
over, you know, we don't have, like, right away something that we can do. Egress is not something that we can do because it's a DOT thing.
Yeah, I would say over the course of an application process, there are conversations that take place throughout that process with various agencies, with applicants, that elements and things that might come to agreement on in those conversations are applicable at different parts of that process. And so things that might be agreed upon will come up during site plan, things might come up during sketch plan, things might come up during preliminary plan. This is something that is dealt with at preliminary plan. And looking at the letter from DOT, again, they do not say it must be 60 feet. They don't say no access at all or egress. They're simply stating that this is what it is, and this is what the master plan of highways calls for this. It doesn't say specifically that this needs to be that.
I get it, Jason, but the point is that if I'm an applicant and I'm spending zillions of dollars, I want to get it right before I spend any more money. I totally understand what you're saying in different stages, but if we make agreements and we don't document them somehow, they come back 2 years later, people have changed and things has changed, and they could change things that it's gonna have fiscal consequences that it would be detrimental to the existence of the project, and millions of dollars could be wasted. So I totally understand that you're talking about things have their own place, but if they are discussed and it's important for the project, somehow that should have been agreed and put somewhere, that they don't put their bases on something that then would be changed later on.
Can I just so we can move on in here. If the board, say, a preference is 50 feet and then and then this access piece, it's still you need some analysis, right? I mean, to figure out, can it really work with all the moving pieces, right? And the goal was to see if it can work sooner than later. Even if we put in, we would prefer, if it can't work, it can't work. But the goal is to figure it out quickly. Can it work? And whether quickly is 2 weeks on the, the road width, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks on the access, but sooner than later, because we know once, it's going to take, I don't know how long it's going to take to get do the preliminary plan, and then once that, you have 120 days, I don't know how long, to approve the preliminary plan. We want to do sooner. So I'm okay with having the board prefers that, as long as it's still, it could come out, I mean, you tell me, it could come out that a 50-foot right-of-way may not work, or DOT may say access off of Pearl Main, won't work, but we want to figure that out quickly or soon. So our preference is our preference, but there still needs analysis, correct? I mean, or Mr. Brockmeyer?
At the very least, there's further discussion needed with MCDOT. We want to talk about the egress and the access on Pearl. While typically the board has the purview over the right-of-way width, that is something we discuss with MCDOT in terms of the dimensions of the what is included in the cross-section. So yes, some additional conversation at the very least, and possibly some additional analysis, but at least additional conversation with DOT since they are not here.
Okay. So what I would recommend that we just go ahead and say, Ms. Vyas, you said the words would be preference or suggest strong preference. What would? It's not say it has to, but it's a
One
strong.
wouldn't be in the conditions, it would just be in the discussion and the findings portion, or you could say that the board, prefers the 50-foot right-of-way and full access on Pearl, subject to further review by DOT and transportation staff and amendment of the April 2nd letter if appropriate.
That's what I would recommend that we put in.
I mean, does that satisfy the applicant's need for some certainty before moving forward? I am concerned, particularly, I understand putting things in their appropriate time and place, but to the point that was made earlier, we hadn't had multifamily built in quite some time, and we need multifamily built. And I don't want to put friction in front of that for something that is essentially a 10-foot along a frontage, important as that may be. So I do want to make sure that if that's reasonable for the applicant, I want to make sure that that's a reasonable approach to try to solve the problem without putting it in the condition.
Or we do nothing and with the letter in the.
I'm a realist, and I'm hearing the discussion, and while we wish that there was certainty and it be placed in the conditions, we understand. So I think Ms. Vyas's suggestion is workable. I mean, and I'll leave it at that.
Could I ask sort of another way of the same question? Is what we're talking about in any way prevent or make you leery about moving on to the next step?
No, and no, I don't think so, because I think we're all on the same page, and I appreciate all of this conversation, I really do. We have had a number of conversations, as everyone has said, and everyone was aligned, and we did get to yes. And it really does come down to, without it being in writing, if we show up in a year with preliminary plan, are there new people and they say, well, I didn't say yes? That's our concern. And so I actually think we're all aligned, and I really do appreciate everyone trying to work through this and appreciate what you're saying. So I think pursuing the letter or putting in something here would help us with a note of preference, and then pursuing maybe something a little more concrete with DOT and staff. We're happy to continue working with them. I think we've done it enough, and now if the direction is let's get to a letter, I'm confident that we can make that happen.
If that works for the applicant, I'm good with the suggestion, yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Can I say one more thing on a slightly different topic before there are moves and votes? It's now, okay. So just to clarify something Mayor Rush made, the comment about the building height at the southernmost end and wanting that to be 35 feet, and Ms. Harris reflected, I think, that it's 40, 45. Those, I think, as we move into site plan, I think we'll have greater levels of detail. They will continue to be developing their project, and I think that's something that we would commit to on both sides. If I could speak for Ms. Harris on this. We'll look in that in more detail, but I just wanted to, there were two numbers that were out there, and I just wanted to confirm that we will look at that in greater detail at site plan.
Great, duly noted, thank you.
comprehensive plan.
So what I understand, the motion is to move forward with the condition as in the report, but in the resolution to show a preference for the 50-foot right-of-way and the egress off of Pearl Street, subject to final.
An update to the DOT letter from April 2nd, correct? Yeah.
So that language would be in the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
No.
Okay.
Great.
Can I say one quick thing unrelated to this? And it's not, I don't think this has to be part of any motion, but the end of the shared street, Pearl, where it kind of, you were showing the monumental stairs and things like that, which I think looks great. I would encourage you, as like you move to design this more fully, I would encourage you to think about also making that a place where like people want to sort of be and not just pass through. So, you know, things like shade structures, things like kind of other creative seating arrangements, even trees down there, street, like something to make it sort of a comfortable place and not just kind of a passageway, I think would really enhance it a lot. But I know those details I know far off. I just want to plant that seed and, yeah, encourage that.
And that is exactly what we're aiming for.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know that image didn't show necessarily furniture and things like that, but that's absolutely what we're aiming for.
Okay,
is-
awesome.
Yeah, you know you've made it to Bethesda when you're coming from the east, when you get to this kind of grand opening here.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Well, great. So do I have a motion for approval of?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the sketch plan with the conditions, including including in the resolution, the preference of the board for the 50-foot right-of-way, as well as access to egress and a potential updating of the April 2nd DOT letter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for the staff for, this is a big project. I know it takes a lot of coordination. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And so we will return with our board meeting at 2 o'clock, and then, and now we're going to,
Well, yeah, that's it. We're closing
we're closing this, the board meeting, and we'll be back at 2. Thank you.
That's all we need, okay.